This is a pretty important time to be at the helm of the Planning Commission, with our 8-year cycle right now and the housing element. So I just kind of want to ask you a little bit about, how you are approaching that process and kind of what you want to see the city focus on when it comes to creating this new plan that's going to guide us, for almost the next decade.
I would say what's really interesting about this housing element cycle is it's very different from previous cycles. I mean, housing elements, cities have been doing them throughout California for decades. And because of changes in state law, there are a lot of different requirements this year. I think a lot more teeth in terms of what the state is looking for, a lot more specificity, a lot more grounding in reality in terms of why do we as a city think that our plan is feasible. Housing is essential for people to survive, to thrive in our community and just in the world. A real focus on reparations, very much centering Black and American Indian experience and centering what is needed for those communities in order to be successful and to repair some of the harms of the past. And then, of course, there's also a focus on the capacity. And that tends to be kind of what catches the headlines is rezoning or the need to create additional capacity to physically accommodate the number of units that the RHNA has assigned to the city of San Francisco. We really need to focus acutely in this particular down cycle on, I think, land acquisition and really having strategies to make sure that we have the space to build 100% affordable housing. I think there's a real opportunity coming into the beginning of the cycle to really think about what type of resources dollar-wise are going to be needed if we're going to build the affordable and moderate income housing that we are allocated. And so certainly a portion of that will be completed by the private market through inclusionary housing, but inclusionary housing only reaches so low in terms of affordability and only covers so many units. So I think there's a real call for the city and public agencies and our public and private sector partners and nonprofit partners to really think creatively about how do we, raise the money that's needed in order to construct and to operate that level of affordable housing in the next cycle.
Meanwhile, there's this whole process happening where the state has launched an investigation into San Francisco over its policies and practices. What are you going to be keeping your eyes peeled for, when the results of that investigation start to come out, and what types of policies and practices, are you aware of that might, have been identified as problematic?
I'm looking forward actually to the results of the study and to having some kind of third party, if you will, perspective on what we can improve. Obviously, the report that came out, I believe, is from the Turner Center saying that we had one of the longest timelines for permitting. Was not great. I don't think we are super happy to be the first in that category. And so how do we look at this investigation, not so much as a punishment, but as an opportunity to do better, to learn, to grow, and to change practices that may be hampering us? I think one of the challenges that I would foresee in trying to untangle, and I'm not really sure exactly how we'll do it as a city, as part of kind of a long-standing interpretation of the charter has been that all planning permits in the city are discretionary. That's a pretty big difference from other cities in the state. And I'm curious to see how much time that adds to that long time period. And if there is anything that we can do short of amending the charter to really move in a different direction, where we can really, as a city, provide clear code guidance that says this is what we want the building to do and how we want it to look like. And if you're doing that, then you don't need to have an extremely long process.
Do you favor, more that kind of intimate local control, that kind of project by project approval, or are you, interested in kind of dissolving some of that power and allowing some of these projects to just go through by right?
Yeah, I think the way that I would frame it is where and how do we want to exercise our local control? So it's not so much local control or not local control. It's more about how and when and where do we implement that. I really believe that if we can say how we want things to be and how we want them to be developed, that we don't necessarily need to have things come to the commission because the commission's already spoken. That is democracy. That is our government and our citizens coming together, saying what we want, and then creating rules that allow that to be built. And so to that degree, we do exercise our local control. We just have to do it clearly, upfront and in advance, instead of kind of looking at each project on its own really looking at the totality of the neighborhood or the area and saying, how do we want this to be shaped in the future?